Welcome to Business Problem Solvers Podcast, where legal insight meets entrepreneurial innovation. Are you a startup founder navigating the complex legal landscape of entrepreneurship? Are you seeking practical advice, actionable strategies, and expert guidance to propel your business forward? Look no further. Eric Alspaugh is a seasoned attorney based in the vibrant startup hub of California, and he's thrilled to be your host on this exciting journey. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the intersection of law and business, bringing you insightful interviews with a diverse range of industry experts, thought leaders, and successful entrepreneurs. From intellectual property and contract law to corporate governance and regulatory compliance, we'll cover the essential legal topics that every startup needs to know. Our guests will share their wisdom, experience, and practical tips to help you navigate legal challenges, seize opportunities, and build a thriving business in today's dynamic marketplace. So whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, a budding startup founder, or simply curious about the intersection of law and business, join Eric on Business Problem Solvers Podcast as we explore the legal insights and entrepreneurial inspiration that will fuel your journey to success.
Hey, welcome, Daniel Cooper. Thank you for joining the Business Problem Solvers Podcast. It's an honor to have you here. I'm interested in getting your insights today on a range of topics. Hopefully, it will be entertaining for our listeners and that people can get some useful information from your 15 plus years of legal experience. Your firm is based in Los Angeles, California, and you have practiced in litigation for over 10 years and in business transaction for many years. And your experience in Los Angeles and also where I'm based in Orange County, I think will spill over to relevant information for our listeners. And I'm grateful to have you on as a guest.
Well, appreciate it. Always happy to join. And you and I have had the pleasure of working together some, so excited to share some more stories.
Awesome. And there's a couple of topics I do want to talk about. I enjoy discussing anecdotal stories, and hopefully that can parlay into value that listeners can recognize. Maybe they've experienced some things and they can be proactive in recognizing some of these issues, and therefore they're getting some value. I also wanted to talk about some other things besides just anecdotal stories about business practices in general in the legal community to help consumers or potential clients understand how to efficiently engage with a law firm and just have manage their expectations.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So obviously you kind of alluded to it. I'm a recovering litigator. So I started doing that. And I think anyone who's, ever had to hire a lawyer, I think you think of these lawyers as these very professional, buttoned up suit, tie folks. And, my sort of introduction to the legal practice is when I started in civil litigation is showed up at a deposition, sat down. I was 25 years old, never been in a deposition before, even in law school, right? Even in practice, never had the chance to do that. So first week told here, go to this deposition. And it's a big case. There's 20 lawyers in a big conference room because there's multiple parties, multiple defendants, and I'm just representing one of the parties. And during this course of a highly contentious case, the lawyer asking the questions and the lawyer defending the deposition kind of got into a heated back and forth in their questioning. And at one point, the defense lawyer takes out a piece of paper, makes it into a paper airplane and throws it and hits the guy right in the face or in the forehead and knocks him back. And he's like, I'm like sitting there just with my mouth open and I'm like, welcome to the practice of law, right? Is this
wow?
Is this what we deal with every time? And I never experienced that in the next 12 years of litigating, never saw anything like that again. And that was in my first deposition. So I think you would know the one part I've loved about practicing law, litigation, and now transactional is, you work with so many different industries and people, right?
Yeah.
That you never know. Every day is different. Every matter, case, transaction is different. And, you deal with so many different personalities, both on the legal side, client side. So I think we have a very kind of diverse, interesting practice that, sometimes people think contracts are boring, but this stuff all can be very entertaining. And there's lots of good stories out there about various cases, and you can be entertained for sure.
Awesome. That's a great opener. And depositions where the lawyers get into a tiff is extraordinary, I imagine. That's a great,
Yeah,
great
and
way to get
normally
baptized.
I think people hire attorneys because there's some very smart people that have to hire lawyers, right? There's sophisticated business owners that frankly, they could have gone to law school and been very successful. And frankly, their creativity and they can issue spot as well as some of the best lawyers out there. So there's some really helpful clients out there. But I think one thing that gets overlooked is one of the advantages to having an attorney represent you, even when you're a smart, sophisticated business owner, is that you're hopefully able to take some of the emotion out of it, right? The lawyer is supposed to bear that burden, that stress for you, so that you don't have to be emotionally attached to every back and forth communication. But as I alluded to, sometimes the lawyers are very personally involved and that's why these things get contentious and you can have these sort of back and forth things. So it's supposed to work like that way. As you know, things don't always go as planned. And sometimes you got to be willing to roll with the unexpected.
Awesome. So my practice has been primarily with startups and engineers at very early stages. And you also work with a range of clients transactionally from early stage to pre-revenue, revenue, capital raises. But the perspective that you bring, what I call is with the end in mind, which is the exit, or in your particular case, expertise in seeing where things have gone wrong and then how that plays out in a courtroom. And so you're able to have the perspective of, reverse engineering all the way back in time to the beginning and seeing where a contract, a communication, or something else didn't line up and might have been the cause. So can you think of a few of those very early stage causes that might be relevant to some of our listeners?
Yeah, I'll give you one. This is sort of a litigation matter, kind of estate planning, but I was involved in a very interesting case where after this gentleman had passed away, his estate got sued for something the person who died had done during his life. It was actually a shooting. And that all could have been protected if things were done before he had died to protect the estate. And so looking back on it, you're kind of looking reverse engineering. Should other things have been done to perhaps provide some additional protection, with the idea that, hey, this could be coming. There are people that may want to go after the estate. And then the gentleman's no longer there in person to defend himself, the person who's passed away. And so now you're looking to sort of circumstantial evidence in order to protect you. So, that's one of the things where I'm like, wow, I wish we had gotten involved earlier, because we certainly could have taken steps to maybe get in front of this issue. And that's often where you see things. So much of it to me, though, is in contracts. Every transaction, if you're doing a business deal, I think you and I have a similar approach, is you don't want to slow down the momentum of business. I think too often lawyers can get in the way and focus on things that really don't matter. But I've found there's like 2 or 3 clauses that really matter. And those could be things like, you know what, I'm going to be a consultant after I sell this business. I'm going to stay on for 6 months or 9 months or a year. But then life happens and circumstances change and they don't want to stay on the 6 months anymore. And so they leave. but no one bothered to put that protection in place to prevent them from leaving or having any recourse that they were a key man or key woman. And that
Okay.
they were really essential to make the business run successfully. And so that to me is where time should have been spent in the transactional sort of process that then ended up becoming a big problem, right? Because someone dies, someone decides, gets a divorce, someone just decides they don't want to work anymore. And the person who maybe sold them a company was expecting or anticipating they would be there to help them. So I think I like to spend a lot of time on, wait, what if circumstances change? They often do.
Mhm.
And have we thought through how, if they do change, this thing doesn't become a disaster, there's still protection in place.
Great. I love that forethought into those contingencies and walking through some hypothetical outcomes that, you kind of surprised me with. There was a shooting and also my client died. Though that seems like those are relatively remote kind of outcomes, and most people are run out of money sooner than expected seems to be more common.
Well, the shootings are not expected. I think how you react if you have so it doesn't have to be a shooting per se. There could be a crisis in the family. There could be a divorce. There could be certain life circumstances. Business shuts down. What do you do now to hopefully, once that happens, to prevent more bad things from happening, whatever those may be on the horizon, right? So, you could never fully anticipate these things. I'll tell you, I mean, when I was a litigator, one of my cases, never would have expected this, took me where I had to take depositions in Hong Kong. And,
Okay.
and that's because the family had come here, they'd gotten medical care here, they then left, went back to mainland China, and ended up filing a lawsuit here. But then they had moved back to China after they got medical care here, and then filed lawsuit here. So we had to fly out all the way to Hong Kong as sort of the neutral, so to speak, spot to take depositions and handle it that way. So, there's always unexpected things in a case, in a transaction. You never know where you're going to end up, right? So
That actually dovetails with something else that I hadn't really thought of, which is international transactions and taking those kind of contingencies. Maybe it's for a business growth reason that could be planned expansion, or maybe it's an unexpected opportunity or an unexpected liability that comes out of across foreign jurisdictions. Are there some things that you can do in advance or advising clients, and when's the right time or where is the right place to document what those types of issues could be for international transactions? Help me understand some of those pre-planning or counseling things that you can do with clients.
I think so. If we've worked with companies that have come from Asia, Europe, and they're established in those foreign jurisdictions, and then they want to come to the United States. I think, relatively speaking, if it's not that hard as a foreign business owner to come to the United States and do business. I think we're pretty receptive, pretty business friendly, although it differs by state, obviously. But I think there's definitely opportunity to come here. I think the most important thing,
Okay.
it's sort of obvious, is that in your, whatever the original jurisdiction is, the business has to be set up correctly there. So the pre-planning is, can we talk to your Hungarian attorney? Can we talk to your Swiss lawyer? Can we talk to your
Okay.
French attorney who formed your company, and make sure that everything is, you're good on your taxes are set up correctly. You have the equivalent operating agreement or partnership agreement in that jurisdiction, so that and you have appropriate documentation on who the owners are. I think you and I know a lot of times people bring on new investors, new owners from where they originally started, and where 2 years later, their ownership may not be the same as when someone launched. So I think making sure that those original documents, such as ownership documents, having appropriate cap tables, for example, very important as part of our pre-count. Let's get that right before we bring you here, because then we don't want to have to fix two problems, right? Then
Got it.
because I think if that's squared away, I think it's relatively easy here to come form a business with appropriate legal counsel to help you. I think it's especially if someone has a contact in the United States that's going to be working with them. I think it's you now have some boots on the ground sort of contact, and I think it dovetails very nicely.
Well, that's good to hear that our system is open, receptive, and relatively streamlined, or there's processes that you understand to bring on and shepherd foreign companies coming to the U.S. How about for early stage companies here in the U.S.? What are some issues they should be thinking about if they have operations in the U.S.? Do they need to be worried about foreign jurisdictions or conflicts outside? And the reason I'm thinking of that is a client recently received a intellectual property infringement letter from a company in Europe. And this particular client is operating here in the United States and wasn't aware of this foreign company at all. Not sure if the foreign company has assets or really has IP in the United States. And it seemed like it came out of left field. Are there things that startup companies should do routinely or proactively, or is that just part of business? You can't anticipate everything.
Well, I think it's a good point. And I think the first thing you have to do when you get something like this is a lot of times, and this has actually become a big problem for our clients, whether they're foreign or based here in the United States, is getting these sort of IP infringement letters, and they're somewhat of a scam. And they're a half scheme. So I'm seeing a lot of that where you get this letter, a company gets a letter and says, oh, we're such and such firm, and we're writing to advise you that we're planning to file trademark protection for XYZ company, and your YXZ company has a very similar sounding name. And if we do register this, you very well may be prohibited or precluded from using this name. But contact us and we'll go through it with you. If you hire us, we'll protect your name or your entity and give you protection. And then most people we work with are busy, so they're doing a million things a mile a minute, and so they think that this is legit, or they're not thinking, and they call or they'll submit something to try to get it resolved, and then now they've done something they really didn't need to do. So to kind of come back to your original question, we offer outside general counsel services, but I think, to me, the number one thing you can do to protect yourself, you got to have ongoing conversations with someone that knows that's up to speed on these things. So whether that's your CPA or your attorney or a business advisor, I think it's important for business, and this is somewhat legal and somewhat just practical, is you have to be able to have ongoing discussions about your business where you kind of step out from it, get out from just doing the actual operations and have a big picture look at it, and just get on the off ramp for a moment and make sure that there's no issue. Just something to consider, because I think we get so busy that we forget how these things work.
That reminds me of why I like working with you, is because you have such a depth and understanding of just relationships and how people work, and you've got contacts and connections in all sorts of industries, for what I call a deep bench of resources. Maybe they're referrals, maybe they're business connections, but I think your ability to step back from just the purely legal or litigation and look at a business's position, where they're at in time and space, and recognize you need additional resources that aren't just purely, am I in compliance with California statute XYZ? You need to speak to professionals that are CPAs or contract licensing experts or other resources.
Right. I think,
me out.
Yeah, one of the things as a litigator, when you're in litigation, it's a reactionary practice. And what I mean by that is you don't have a choice. Someone's being sued, you have to react, you have to respond. You now have this conflict. I think what we try to do is a preventative law practice, which is let's address questions, let's address issues before they're really even issues, before they're really ever questions, and certainly well before it ever gets anything into a dispute that could result in litigation. And so that's it's not just reacting to, oh, there's this new law coming out July 1, and there were several that just, that are new laws, but it's also planning for stuff that could be coming 6 months from now. So you're not scrambling. As I think you and I have talked about, a lot of people are starting to scramble with the Corporate Transparency Act that is now a requirement. And, folks that were formed, businesses that were formed prior to this year have until the end of this year, but businesses that are formed this year have a very short window to get their filing in. And if they're a 2025 business, they're only going to have 30 days. So that's a very short window coming. And I think the other thing people are overlooking, so they hear about these laws, they hear about a filing sort of issue, but we have a lot of clients that are in real estate that are constantly forming new entities because they're doing special purpose entities to put a building into, and they're constantly buying and selling buildings. And so they always are having to be in compliance. They always have to be updating their filings, such as these Corporate Transparency Act filings. And they may think they're in compliant because they did it right this year, but they may not realize what's going to change in January of 2025. I'm always like, just let someone handle it for you. They can put together a running list of all your businesses. They can have the deadlines. They file it for you. You keep running your business. But I think even people that think they understand that could get caught because there are nuances, and you change ownership. Now, all of a sudden, it's not the same thing as maybe what you're able to do with your other business.
Great point. And we are experiencing a lot of that with updated laws all the time. In changing gears a little bit and favorite types of industries you get to work with, you mentioned, I think, medical malpractice. I don't know if you did plaintiffs or defense or both, but in the transactional space, and I know you work with a lot of professionals, professional corporations, medical outfits. Are there any, when you're onboarding clients, are there any insight that you can give these potential clients to ease that process of meeting and interviewing attorneys, or they don't know what they don't know? What are like 2 or 3 kind of ideas that we could give our listeners so that they would feel comfortable asking an attorney such as yourself and getting interviewed to see if you're a right match? Is that how it even works?
Yeah, I think if they're organized, and by organized, I mean, you don't have to be a lawyer or analyze your transaction. But if someone can at least put in order their 4 or 5 PDFs or documents they want looked at, so we're not digging through it. And then, I think there's a couple key things that we always need to know. It's like how much, if we're doing a business transaction, how much money is at stake, right? Who are the
Seems to make sense.
who are the parties, and then what are the goals? But when I say what are the goals, I mean, sometimes people have the approach, they think that what they're buying a company or doing a deal that's so fantastic, they want it to go through at all costs. And there's some that are like, no, we only want it to go through if it's a good deal. So I think understanding, like, I want you to make this deal. If they tell us, a potential client comes in and says, I want this deal to go through unless you find an absolute disaster that I had red flag that I knew nothing about. Or they might say, you know what, I'm interested in this, but I want to make sure this is vetted thoroughly. So I need more, because then that lets us know, all right, if someone's determined to get this to go through at all costs, then we can scale back what our approach is going to be in terms of legal assistance. They don't need much legal assistance. They need us to just look for the big problems. Whereas if someone else is like, no, I'm very concerned, but if things check out, I want the deal to go through, then I know that, okay, we want to spend more time and we want to look at some very specific things to make sure this transaction is what they think it is. And so I think if folks come in with their goal in mind of where they want to, how they want to end up and how they want to use the lawyer, right? I always tell clients, how do you want to use us? Do you want us, are we there to provide you with some leverage to show the other side that they should take you seriously because you're backed by legal counsel? You're showing that you've invested some money into the deal because you have someone who's looking things over. There's value in just doing that.
Absolutely.
Just the fact that they know now you have a lawyer. They don't have to know exactly what the lawyer's doing.
Sure.
But like I said, I think having how you want to use the lawyer, tell us how you want to use us. Do you want to use us as the muscle, or do you want to use us as, polite back? I mean, I think the nice thing about transactional is we're less conflict, we're more collaborative. But that I think as a litigation attorney in the past, I know where potential disputes are, and I don't mind pointing those things out, like, proceed with caution. And we don't want our clients to be taken advantage of. So I think also being able to share, like, look, what they're proposing is very industry standard. You're being given a very fair deal. We see these deals all the time. It's not worth pushing back on that because you may scare them off.
Okay.
But if we know that they're okay scaring them off because they only want the deal to go through if it's just absolutely everything falls into place, then we're okay taking that position.
Got it. So that kind of reminds me of a couple of points, which is experience I've had as in-house counsel and engaging with large law firms to help with business transactions, and then getting called in with the general counsel or a partner at a big outside firm, and them bringing on experts for subcategories of international tax, a trademark expert, a copyright expert, and an oil and gas regulatory expert, and having these very detailed, involved, long conversations where 3/4 of the counsel are billing, but may not be contributing to what the client needs at the particular time. How does a client, balance having the efficiency of smaller firm direct contact with a partner versus having a very large firm with experts in everything, but having to wait to get on their calendar, or have the excessive, or I call it excessive, maybe there's a better word, for having 4 or 5 attorneys on one phone call when you might only need 1 or 2.
Sure. I mean, I think that's totally dependent on the transaction, right? There's times when it's such a large deal and there's so many different moving parts and there's such an urgency and timing where you need a firm with 25 lawyers to be working on the transaction. And at that point, the financials, the legal expenses are already already anticipated. They've already sort of underwrote those expenses into their transaction costs. and they want it done correctly. And they frankly want to be able to show whoever it is that they need to demonstrate this to, maybe it's investors, their clients, their customers, that they took these sort of detailed steps. Most of the work we involve isn't going to be something where it requires 30 lawyers, although as outside general counsel, we do get brought in for clients that are using very large law firms. One thing that we do is we review the legal bills of some of the largest law firms in the country for our clients, because again, they want someone else to know that even though they're busy, they have someone that's even protecting them on that front. And when I was litigating, I represented many large hospitals and HMOs and large entities. And, there's what they would often dictate. So they might hire our firm, but I think clients should understand is if you're transparent and communicate from the beginning, you can dictate a lot of these things like, hey, I don't necessarily feel I'm talking from the client's perspective. I don't need 3 lawyers on this matter. And so if you're going to have an internal discussion, are you going to charge me for both of those? Those are sorts of questions a client can ask when they're interviewing an attorney. And the reason I bring that up is our very large, when we worked for large business clients, I'm talking some of the largest Fortune 500 companies, is they often have, all of these big companies, 50-page guidelines for their lawyers, right? That lay out who can bill, who can do what, how much time can be spent on research. Now, I don't necessarily think that a smaller client needs to have 50-page guidelines, but I think it's reasonable to have a general discussion with any attorney they're considering hiring about how do you staff the case?
Yeah.
Can we do this efficiently? Because a lot of times, maybe the managing partner or a partner for certain aspects, can we have the paralegal do certain parts? Or perhaps they want the partner to do everything, but that's something that should be discussed in advance so that there can be clear understanding between both client and lawyer about how that's going to be handled.
Yeah, I find there's a mystery of how people engage law firms and how they become consumers of legal services and how they can inadvertently, by not understanding, open the door for wide open questions. And attorneys are risk averse by nature, can misinterpret what the client's want is, or maybe misunderstand the budget and run wild, checking off all the don't eat the daisy clauses in a contract and making sure that risks are eliminated, but those risks aren't really relevant. And so I like to, have educational conversations with my clients and help them become good consumers of legal services. And I think that's actually what you do by providing outside general counsel services to clients. You can help leverage every dollar they spend in legal, get a greater return by doing those billing reviews and helping them get their interests aligned and educating them on the appropriate questions to ask those specialists.
Right. I mean, I think every month it shouldn't be a surprise as to what's being done. Now, there's sometimes I think if you're not a lawyer, it may be hard to understand all the steps to get to the end point and what has to go all the time. I mean, lawyers do spend a lot of time and there is sort of this transaction cost to get to the end point that seems like it should be fairly easy, but I think that's where communication is so important. I think clients oftentimes just get the bill and they look at the number. And I say, one way you can get an update is actually read the entries in the invoice, especially if you have an attorney that's billing hourly, is that should basically flow or roadmap for you what's being done, and then you can use that as a discussion point for the next month to show, okay, I see what was the focus this month. Are we focusing on the right things, or do we need to slightly tweak it and spend more time on perhaps another topic that's more important, or where they rather would spend their funds? And that's how you can get, I think, better value, because there's no reason why the client can't be driving where they want the time and energy spent. And as long as I think the lawyer, there's nothing unethical about it, there's nothing, where you're not overlooking some major issue. I think we want to serve the clients in a way that makes them comfortable. If they're doing a business deal, they're buying a company, they're buying real estate. I mean, I help some clients will use me when they're buying a car, which you wouldn't think about. But if you're buying an exotic vehicle, right? Like maybe it's not, it could be a very sizable sum of money.
Sure. That's interesting. I think maybe that could be a side hustle for you, which would be mentoring law firms and helping them create bills that help the client out in creating a roadmap. I think that's a great idea. So you've touched on a couple of different industries. I'm curious, do you have a favorite industry type to work in?
I like them all. I think anything where the client is interacting with other customers or clients, I've always found interesting. So naturally, working with physicians, I've enjoyed, because I've defended them in litigation, but now it's more, how can we protect them to avoid that? Because I know how stressful and how time consuming that is, how it takes away from their regular practice. And so I do enjoy working with physicians. I have a lot of friends that are doctors and nurses. We worked with a lot of nurses that want to start a medical spa or partner with a physician or a clinical director for that. And so I do like medical entrepreneurs, especially ones that are, with these days, telehealth and concierge medicine has become, has really taken off, post COVID. And so oftentimes they want their informed consents looked at, and they just want to make sure their forms are buttoned up, which is, I think, a smart move. But so I like the medical clients. I like business owners in basically all the trades. But we've had clients that own construction companies, fencing companies, wellness, marketing. I mean, it runs the full spectrum.
Awesome. Well, I'm a medical device guy, and so I enjoy the medical technologies, but I also work in the automotive space and sometimes the software space, and I really enjoy experiencing the trials and tribulations of different industries to see how there's differences, and that helps me identify issues in the future for my clients by seeing how different industries are run. And you had actually mentioned doing a significant amount of transactions in certain industries so that you can be confident in communicating to clients and saying, now look, this is a standard kind of a term. If you're pushing back on this, you're going to appear uneducated. That's going to alert the other side to risks with you as being a potential partner or an exit that's going to trigger liabilities. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's just so variable, right? Like I think that's why it's just important to have a conversation with an attorney. Like, I think you and I know this. It's like our contacts are comfortable reaching out to us when they're even not sure about something. And sometimes just having 1-minute conversation with someone can put your mind at ease. Sometimes you don't need a lawyer too. There's sometimes that's the answer.
Sure. That's great. And so pivoting directions, are there what interests outside of providing legal services do you have? Are you involved in any volunteer organizations or community activities that you get value from or enjoy serving in?
Yeah, I'm on the board of directors for the Long Beach Bar Association. So, and they obviously put on a lot of great events. They do a scholarship dinner. They do a golf tournament. I've enjoyed, and I like all the lawyers that are on the board with me. Great professionals. So I've devoted my time to that. I'm on a HOA board for a condo association. I kind of view that as community service. It takes up people realize HOA work, being on a board is a lot of time, and obviously you don't get compensated for this, is a lot of time, but I enjoy helping out some fellow homeowners on stuff like that. So I take up that time. I got my family, so that keeps me busy too. Obviously coach some little league, do those sorts of things. And that between that and the practice, my day is full. Like I said, I do enjoy being on the Long Beach board. That's been a good, and I'm in some other sort of groups where we get together with people. So those have been good.
Awesome. So what about, are you seeing any trends? I know we've discussed some AI, and that's been a topic I've been bringing up with my interviewees on this podcast. And do you have any thoughts on AI, generative AI, general intelligence, and how that's impacting our industry?
Yeah, I don't think it's replaced lawyers yet, but I think it's become a very valuable, and maybe it will in more respects, certain aspects of a law firm. I think where it's at now and how we use it is it's a tool to make things more efficient. And so, my firm uses a service called counsel, and it's essentially like ChatGPT, but it's for lawyers. Now, it's not going to give you legal advice, but it will take a document that could be 50 pages and it'll summarize it for us and hyperlink to the document. So if a client, and it'll also create timelines. So the reason I like this is new client could come in, they could give us 15 documents, an Excel spreadsheet, a contract, a letter of intent, 5 side agreements, but they're all kind of related to some transaction that's all related. We can stick it in co-counsel, and in 5 minutes, it'll create a timeline where it integrates all the different documents, right? So we are using that. Well, clients shouldn't have to now, so I think where clients benefit is they shouldn't have to pay what in the past they might very reasonably be billed 4 to 5 hours for the attorneys to go through and summarize these documents, because they have to understand the details to maybe do the transaction, even if a paralegal was summarizing it. And now that can be done essentially in 5 minutes. Now someone still has to read the document, but now rather than that's been created, but rather than spending 3 hours on a summary, it's down to 20 minutes.
Okay.
To prepare it and to have a summary that everyone can use. And now you're able to allocate funds to the things that are more important. And so
absolutely,
we're using AI, like that. I see it coming. I think as it gets smarter, it will do more and more drafting of documents. It's starting to do that. I know the summaries are here. I know it's starting to do legal research. I found that it's helpful as a starting point on a topic. It doesn't always give you the specific answer that perhaps the matter requires. It may give you, but it will direct the lawyer to some key cases or some key statutes that make it in a much more condensed fashion, that make it more time effective than maybe it was even 5 years ago. So I think as AI improves, I definitely see it doing, people not having to type up letters anymore. I do see it. It'll get smarter and smarter, typing up letters, doing the summaries. I think it'll automatically generate and populate, on a business transaction. If you have a bill of sale, you have a stock purchase agreement, you got a consulting agreement, you've got a couple exhibits, disclosures, you give the information, you give it some prompts, it'll populate those documents for you.
Oh, wow.
And then I think, then it's up to the lawyer and the client to maybe just tweak them a little bit. I think that's all that's all coming.
Yeah, it's been an exciting time since ChatGPT has become publicly available, and I've enjoyed using it and some programs like counsel to test and just see what the outer limits are. And even in the last 6 months, see some improvements. But I maybe I'm biased, but I don't see that the legal research from the AI. I think you said it's close, it's good, but it can't supplant a lawyer with
No, that's the part.
experience.
That's the part of the research, asking it as to answer a legal question. Are you allowed to do this with your medical practice if this is happening, which is always very specific to the client. It'll give you some law, some statute. It doesn't answer the question yet correctly. It just kind of gives a generic answer that's not, and these answers require a specific recommendation, right? It also doesn't give you a recommendation that I think you can take to someone and say, this is the recommendation. I think it's a tool. And then obviously I think what'll take the longest, if it ever gets there ever, is the human element in business deals, the emotion. Is someone being unreasonable because it's, the deal is very personal to them. That part is always going to be a nuance that I think is very, very hard for AI to override or anticipate, where the value in having a live person is still going to be necessary.
All right. So a little bit of job security, you think?
I think for now,
Okay.
I mean, things change, right? So I would never say in 10 or 15 years, I think the good lawyers will take advantage of it. And I think we all have the responsibility to run successful law firms because it allows us to help more people. So I do think that really the advantage is, I think the firms that embrace it will be able to help more people because they're more efficient by using some of these tools.
Great. Cool. Very insightful on all things legal. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to record this and share your thoughts. Do you have any final parting thoughts for entrepreneurs or people who are early stage?
I think it's, whether it's a lawyer or another business professional, I think someone who's starting a business you have to rely on other professionals to guide you. It doesn't have to necessarily be a lawyer, but we specialize in the practice of law. Accountants are specialized in that area. Marketing folks specialize in marketing. You don't want to try to do it all. And so even if you're a startup, leverage your network, in whatever that may be, so that you can, because there's a lot of good, smart people out there in a variety of industries. Take advantage of that. Nothing these days, there's so many resources and good people out there. Take advantage of your network or a colleague's network to make sure you're talking to the right people, because there's a lot of people that are happy to want to just see a new business succeed. I'm very pro entrepreneurship, and if we can steer a business from making a bad mistake, even as a resource, by having a 10-minute conversation, that gives us, that's part of the reason why I went into practicing law and why I enjoy it, is the actual ability to help people. So that always
Awesome.
makes a difference.
Perfect. And so with that, what's the best way some of our listeners can get in touch with you at Cooper and Huber, through a website or email or phone? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Email or website. Our phone number. Our website is just counsel. So CHCOUNSEL.com. That has our phone number, has our email on there. We generally, if someone reaches out, we kind of acknowledge that, set up a phone call, gather some information, try to make sure we can help. We run conflict checks, obviously, just to make sure we haven't represented the other side, do those sorts of background things. But they can call us. like I said, that number's on the website as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Danny. Really appreciate you. And looking forward to seeing what happens over the next few months with legal industry and AI and all those fun things. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Eric. Appreciate it.
Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes, where we'll cover topics ranging from business formation and fundraising to contracts and compliance. Subscribe now and never miss an episode of Business Problem Solvers. Business Problem Solvers podcast is proudly brought to you by Eric B. Alspaugh, APC, providing comprehensive legal solutions for startups and entrepreneurs. Visit our website at www.alspaughlaw.com to learn more. Disclaimer: the information provided in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. Consult with a qualified attorney or legal advisor to address your specific legal needs.